Hello everyone and welcome back to Click Theory 2.0. Now in the last video we take a look at playing various rhythms against each metronome setting, and we analyze the composite rhythms that are created by combining these two voices. So today we're going to take it one step further and apply these same concepts to the drum set. So most of the time when we play drum set, we are playing some sort of repetitive pattern or a groove that remains consistent. And usually in that groove, one or more of the voices is allowed to improvise musically within the style. So we're going to use this concept to apply the previous composite rhythm exercises within the context of an ostinato. Now, this exercise is based upon a classic book called The New Breed by Gary Chester, in which a varying melody is played by a single limb against a repetitive ostinato. So what we're going to do is we're going to play all of the various rhythmic combinations in one melodic voice while keeping an ostinato with the other limbs. So with this exercise, there are seemingly an infinite amount of possible variations and combinations that you can do with the click theory system. And today we're just going to look at two very basic ostinatos to build independence in our right foot on the bass drum and then our left hand on the snare drum. So let's take a look at a very, very simple straight eighth note groove like this one. So we're going to take this ostinato and play the various possible rhythmic combinations on the bass drum against each metronome setting. And remember, when you practice these exercises, to look at each combination both individually and then to play them all sequentially. So I'll demonstrate this exercise 4 times each rhythm on the bass drum with metronome setting number 3, which is on the E. Okay, so now that we have more layers, notice not only how the composite rhythms between the bass drum and the metronome are the same as before, but now there are different composite rhythms happening against the repetitive ostinato and our other limbs. So think about, how does the metronome relate to the hi-hat? How does it relate to the snare drum? How does it relate to all three? In the example I just played, I think something that's interesting is notice how the metronome on the E falls exactly in between the eighth notes on the hi-hat. So when I'm practicing this exercise, not only am I thinking about the composite rhythms between the bass drum and the metronome, but I'm also thinking about all the other rhythms that are going on, especially with that hi-hat. If I can get the metronome to lay exactly in between those eighth notes, then I know that my time is consistent and I'm centered. So it's important to think about how all of these rhythms fit within the 16th note subdivision. Now, in some cases when you're playing an exercise, all of the 16th notes might be distributed amongst all the different layers in the ostinato and in the melodic voice. And once you start to get more comfortable with this idea of the relationship between the metronome and the relationship between your hands and your feet and how everything works together, the invisible grid of 16th notes becomes second nature, and you'll have more confidence to play any note accurately in time, whether you have a metronome or not. So the last exercise uses the bass drum as the melodic voice. And now we're going to try a different groove, this time using the left hand as the melodic voice. And for this, we'll use a basic samba groove, which again, you can find all of the grooves and exercises notated in the downloadable PDF, which you can find in the description below. So notice that this basic samba groove is actually now going to utilize all 4 limbs. 3 limbs within the ostinato, and then 1 limb as our melodic voice. And it actually has all of the 16th note subdivisions within it. So no matter what metronome setting you choose, you'll always be playing a note that will align with the metronome. So really be conscious of that. So now I'm going to demonstrate this samba exercise, and I want you to not only take note of the composite rhythms between the left hand and the metronome, but also now the hi-hat foot, which is our new voice, and the metronome. Remember to practice all of these exercises individually and sequentially, and so I'll do each rhythmic combination 4 times each, and I'm going to use metronome setting number 5, which we haven't done in a while. Now, of course, we can apply all of these concepts to the ternary metronome settings. So let's start by using the bass drum like we did before as the melodic voice within the context of a basic shuffle groove. So I'll demonstrate that. One of the first drum set exercises that I experimented with using the ternary metronome settings was, of course, in the context of straight-ahead jazz swing time. And when we come up with an ostinato to use for this exercise, we don't necessarily need to utilize all 4 limbs. In this case, I'll only utilize 2 limbs, the ride cymbal and the hi-hat, and that frees up my snare drum and my bass drum to be the melodic voice. And you can experiment with playing it in unison or alternating, improvising, or just simply practicing it both ways. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the standard jazz ride cymbal pattern, the hi-hat on 2 and 4, and then I'm going to play each rhythmic combination 4 times on the snare drum and then 4 times on the bass drum and then move on to the next rhythmic combination. So here's what that sounds like. Now, of course, we can also use this to strengthen our independence of our hi-hat foot, so you can do all the rhythmic combinations with that voice as well. Of course, these exercises are just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to all of the possible groove variations and independence exercises that you can work on using the click theory system. When I was working on exercises for this series, I actually came up with using the metronome settings themselves to work on even more advanced jazz coordination, but that's a whole nother video. Remember to start things slow and gradually increase the tempo as you become more comfortable. And remember to be mindful of all the different composite rhythms that are going on between the multiple layers of the drum set and the metronome. So in the next video, we're going to take a look at all of the exercises that we've covered so far, including the ones today, and apply a more advanced set of metronome settings to them. So I'll see you then.